welcome to Sectors Up Close. I'm Elena Casas. My guest today is Stephen Schoenfeld, Chief Executive at MarketVector Indices. And today we're travelling to Brazil, where hopes of an orderly transition from President Jair Bolsonaro to Luiz Inacio Lula da Silva, known as Lula, is giving support to the markets, at least for now. His win represents a stunning comeback. Lula governed Brazil from 2003 to 2010, but then spent time in prison for corruption convictions that were later annulled. Of course, Lula doesn't take office until January, and investors are pretty keen to see what his plans are for social spending, tax policy, and the economy in general. Analysts at Goldman Sachs say his campaign promises for continued income support and consumer debt restructuring could be good news for domestic consumption, a pillar of growth in Latin America's largest economy. But fears the incumbent Bolsonaro could dispute the election kept investors away. So, what have the markets made of Sunday's victory? Well, equities had a bit of a rocky start on Monday, but quickly regained their poise. So, is Brazil more or less investable since Lula's victory? Here to tell us is Stephen Schoenfeld, Chief Executive at MarketVector Indices, which specialises in index benchmarks, asset allocation and investment strategies. Stephen, hi, thank you for joining us. Now, after a couple of days of confusion, it does seem that Bolsonaro has conceded. So what do the markets make of that? Are they relieved?
So the initial reaction, even before he conceded, was positive. Brazilian equities, after a little bit of volatility, were up about 5% in dollar terms as of yesterday. Today, they're just off a little bit. His concession is a de facto concession, and his administration has acknowledged that they're going to proceed in an orderly transition. The nascent Lula administration has already announced an expansion of ministries, and it does look like there will be a stable transition, even though there are still people protesting on the roads in Brazil.
What should investors expect from the new administration then?
So Lula, just as in his previous two terms, has a very significant social agenda, including direct payments to the poor, increase in education, which even the right wing admits is long overdue. The question is, how is he going to pay for it? Even if he did want to go on a huge spending spree, the Congress is controlled by the opposition and they won't allow it. So I think the market, this isn't necessarily a Goldilocks situation, but the market recognizes that there will be checks on his spending tendencies, and he does have a track record of pragmatism. Those two combined, I believe, bodes positive for the market. Of course, different parts of the market will do better than others.
That massive social spending that you mentioned between 2003 and 2010 was really fueled by a massive commodity boom, especially in agricultural exports. Is that going to come back now, or are we in a very different situation?
We're in a different situation in two fronts. One, global food inflation and demand is quite serious. That has benefited Brazil, but it's affected Brazilians as well. And I think there will be a focus on lowering costs within Brazil. However, to pay for all the other social spending, Brazil will still have to export and earn FX. So I think it will be more balanced than most people fear. Also, many of Brazil's commodity giants, whether in grains, coffee, or beef, are truly multinational, and Brazilian regulation can't completely constrain their activity.
So how does that mean you think investors should be looking at the Brazilian agricultural giants now?
So we have indexes that divide Brazil into the more globally oriented parts of the stock market and the more domestically oriented. We've launched them, and there are ETFs trading on B3 exchange. We think on the margin it will help the domestically focused companies, and we think that that is an area of outperformance. But you will have other major exporters, including Petrobras. I think ultimately it will be seen as a national asset and be allowed to grow. So I think investors need to be in Brazil. It's too big to ignore, and there's a lot of room on the upside.
The Brazilian index has already outstripped the S&P 500 and most other emerging markets this year. So why are we seeing that strength?
So part of it is commodities. Part of it is that the Brazilian real has actually been relatively stable and strong. And compared to countries in the emerging markets that are pure negatively affected by inflation, Brazil benefits from rising prices in coffee, in soybeans, in wheat, in energy. And so it's seen as, like Indonesia, a positive beneficiary of some of the macroeconomic trends. It's also quite isolated from the serious geopolitical crosswinds that we're seeing in Asia and Central and Eastern Europe.
Do you think then that there could be more upside to come?
No, I don't think it. I deeply believe that Brazil is got a lot of potential. We know it's always been a country of potential, but it's going to be coming out of a difficult period. I think Lula will bring stability and will be more of a compromise oriented leader than many people expect. He will need to because of the central of the control of Congress by right-wing and conservative members. And so I am bullish on it, and we're excited to see all the new developments coming ahead.
Well, thanks so much for that, Stephen Schoenfeld, CEO of MarketVector Indexes. Well, that's our look at the Brazilian economy. I'm Elena Casas, and this is Reuters.